All right, Coach. Coming off a big win, I'd say, off of Eastern Washington, an emotional win off of Eastern Washington. Let's just start with how do we make the adjustment into this game week, going into a new game? It's a new week.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely something that we gotta compete against this week is understanding that, hey, everybody expects an emotional letdown, and honestly, from as far as human nature is concerned, I mean, it's inevitable. But having those guys recognize that coming off that energy high, that they got to make conscious efforts to bring energy and to bring focus and to support each other, because I just think if you look at the energy that was in Holt Arena on Saturday, you're going to go play a team that is just as talented, if not more so, at a place there where the most people they've had at a game is 1,600. I feel like we have 1,600 people at practice sometimes. But, I mean, Barney's done a wonderful job with that team. They aren't going to give you many opportunities to get excited just because their time of possession is through the roof. They run the heck out of the ball. I think they're running it better than anybody in the conference not named Montana State right now. And they're going to be a problem. They do a great job. They're unique on offense. On defense, they fly around, they hit guys, and you just don't get many shots on goal. They force people into pressing, and they play with a lot of energy. So we gotta make sure we match that all day Saturday.
Cody, you talked about the emotion, possible letdown, maybe a trap game mentality. As a coach, what can you do about that? Because you have a young team. It's not like you've got a lot of guys that have gone through this before.
Yeah, I mean, even saying it's a trap game, I mean, on paper, Portland State's one of the best teams in the conference on paper, if you look at what they're doing. I mean, they're the second best scoring team in the conference. They lead the conference in time of possession. On defense, they're giving up the fewest explosives. I mean, I don't know what there is to underestimate about that. I think if you stare at the logo again, it's just because every year in the Big Sky it's going to be bananas. And Portland State has a ton of good players this year that didn't play for them last year, and the scheme is totally different. If you look at what Barney was doing last year, it was a little bit more like what they were doing with Davis Alexander in years past, and this year's totally different. You know, they went to back when Bob Davie was at New Mexico, all that triple option out of 12 personnel and 30 personnel with 3 tailbacks. I mean, they're doing funky stuff. I mean, it's like what Cal Poly was doing out of triple option, but they're doing it out of the gun. And on defense, man, I mean, those dudes are flying around. I mean, moving. And you try to play action them, but they do a great job recovering over the top, and nobody's really been able to run the ball on them really well unless they get the quarterback involved. So it's going to be a tough game because you're going to feel a definitive absence of energy in Hillsboro from there, just from the crowd standpoint. And having a young team, you have to impart on our kids that we got to understand the energy has to come from us. It's going to come from nobody else. And when you have less possessions on offense, you're just generally going to have less to get excited about. I mean, we're averaging 13 possessions a game. If we would have only gotten 9 possessions against Eastern Washington, we would have lost by 28 points. You know, I mean, that's how it will go. So I think the focus has to be higher by everybody because your opportunities are going to be less. I think you mentioned us having a young team, and that's something that you recognize, and we're going to kind of go through that a little bit this year, unfortunately, because no matter how much you try and replicate certain situations, a lot of the kids on our team are dealing with the emotion of a win for the first time or the emotion of expectations for the first time, whether they're coming from the outside or themselves. And we got to understand that you are only as good as your last play, but your last play doesn't matter. You got to focus on the next one, and that's the only way you can continually be a successful athlete and team.
Not necessarily specific to entering this game, but just now that teams have plenty of film on what you guys are doing, how much of it is implementing new stuff at this point versus reinforcing what you've already put in?
Yeah, you're totally right. I think at this point, especially for what we're doing, we're not installing anything new. Maybe, I mean, you have exotic plays here and there and maybe a tweak to a concept, but it's always going to be the same protections, the same run schemes, the same base pass concepts, just because in our offense, you kind of build in answers for a lot of things. Sometimes it's finding the answers or getting the reps at things that people might do against you. You know, Eastern Washington played a lot more man-to-man defense than they did in games prior against us, which was a great challenge. But I think you saw, even in the first half when we weren't scoring, we had a couple big plays that were there that just didn't materialize. And we had answers for those, and then our guys kind of caught fire there. And, I think Portland State does a really good job kind of on defense in that they have the same base defensive scheme, but there's always one wrinkle that you always got to be ready for, whether it's on third down with their radar front just walking guys around, which could create some big problems for us, or they do a good job kind of poaching what concepts are successful against them and dropping extra players, what we call robbers, just to certain areas of the field. So we got to make sure we're cognizant of that. But if we do what we do well and we can play good ball by Bengal standards, we'll compete in every game. And winning, you always need a little bit of help, and you got to play really well. But I'm excited about the stuff that we have in, and I think we have enough stuff in right now where we can be efficient and explosive.
Cody, you kind of touched on that. On the flip side, let's talk about our defense for a little
Yeah.
bit. We know that Portland State's going to try and run it down our throats this game. They are one of the best running offenses in the conference, right? Kind of what Joey asked, do we need to tweak our defense a little bit, or is it more just focusing on maybe perfecting or getting better at what we do?
I think anytime you see someone who's extremely diverse schematically on either side of the ball, you want to try and simplify what you do and really hone in on the details. So kind of against, if you play a defense that's multiple fronts and going to do a lot of different things, you want to simplify it for offense. Portland State's offense is not only extremely talented, like from a personnel standpoint. I mean, Dante Sachere, I recruited him out of high school, incredibly amazing athlete, fantastic kid. He's probably a better athlete than anybody in the conference right now with the ball in his hands as far as just making guys miss. He's slippery, and he can create the long ones. And then their backs are so talented. Plus, they're running triple option, they're running power reads, zone read, perimeter bash, inverted reads. Those guys create a ton of problems schematically. So for our defense, you don't want to tweak a whole lot because you're about to see stuff that you've never seen before. So our guys, it's about simplifying our game plan, understanding what they're going to do to attack you, and then you always might have one or two change-ups in there. A couple small things just to throw at them and make them hopefully simplify what they're doing because you've done some things that maybe appear more different than they actually are. Just as far as from a quarterback read standpoint, you can't just have the quarterback play the dive theoretically in triple option football the entire game. Otherwise, those military academy guys will go to work with you, and Barney's an extremely fantastic coach, and if he knows what you're doing to play the quarterback, he's going to shred you. So we have a couple change-ups in there, but a lot of it is just honing in on our specific keys and making sure we have quality eyes and can play our technique fast.
Cody, you mentioned about simplifying on defense. You talked about Portland State, you mentioned Cal Poly with the triple option. I remember when Southern Utah used to run the triple option. How do you replicate that in practice, though? Even if you're trying to simplify your defense against something that is rarely seen nowadays.
Yeah, it's hard because on scout cards, we can't necessarily teach our guys to do it. We sort of, you try and, I say, script for success. So we have a call where maybe the quarterback is supposed to be played by the defensive lineman or supposed to be played by the linebacker. And then you just say, hey, you tell the quarterback what the defense is going to do or what they should do so he can make the correct decision off of it. So Jackson Sharman, your scout team quarterback, or JC, Jordan doing some of the runaround stuff that Sasha stuff can do. You really have to do a good job in scripting and teaching with your guys and try and plan for that because you can't make those decisions lightning fast. So we try and sort of pre-make the decision for our scout team pre-snap to try and put our defense in situations we think they'll find themselves in if we play each snap accordingly.
Because that's one of the things, that's why Cal Poly was so hard to play against. You can't replicate that in practice, at least not at the same speed.
No, I'm totally with you. It's like what Cal Poly was doing, but they're doing it with modern things. I mean, they can still run tight zone, they can still run follow, they can still have a great play action and boot game that Cal Poly didn't really have with Coach Walsh. I mean, Cal Poly was a lot more like, Army of 2022, where they're trying to have 8 possessions a game, and those guys are 3 yards in a cloud of dust all the time. These guys, they give the appearance. The problem is they're 4 and 5 yards in a cloud of dust, and they'll hit you with that 3 or 4 times, and then they're going to take a shot or boot and get their quarterback on the perimeter and have an opportunity to pick up a chunk play. And that's what makes them really scary, is that they have the ability to do both.
Cody, after that game against Montana,
Love your shirt.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Calvin Pitcher goes into the press conference after the game against Montana up in Missoula, and he says ISU should have won that game. He also says that the Bengals can compete against any team in the conference. And then this past weekend, top 25 game against Eastern Washington, come back from down 4 touchdowns. How has the confidence level of the team changed? You weren't here last year, but since you got here, how has the confidence level of these players changed?
Yeah, I can attest to how it was. And I think it's just kind of a belief in that playing good football breeds good results. And it's not about what the logo is or the team you're playing against. I don't care how many offers the guy you're playing against had. Everybody's got to show up and play good football in every day. And it's funny looking at our team. I mean, we played bad football in the first half, and good football with divine intervention in the second half, and that breeds in crazy results. But if you just play quality football against anyone, you're going to have a shot to win the football game. And it's not about making miraculous catches. It's not about lighting somebody up so hard that the ball flies loose. It's about being intentional about your technique and being able to focus and being able to flush anything that doesn't go your way and just playing the next play. Because there's enough talent at this level where guys can play really high quality football, and if we control what we can control and focus on the next snap, we'll be able to do that.